All right,
Nice.
everybody. This is the Transition Podcast from Man to God, and I'm your host, Rashad McCants, and we are back with another episode. If you have not caught up to what we're doing and how we are changing and surfacing all of the enlightened beings in the world, this particular episode is to bring to light a whole new marketplace that has been around for a while now, but also has its newer perks of immersive technologies. It's the VR space, the AR space, and the MR space. Anyone that's not familiar with this terminology is augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. And they form one combination, which is extended reality. And the expert today that we have is Levene, and he is an astound expert in this space particularly, but also he has a spiritual side that we want to tap into right away. We've already started the discussion a little bit, but he's based out of Portugal, and it's where a lot of the divine energy, spirits, and connections start and exude from when you're talking about spirituality. Let's go back into it, Luke. Let's talk a little bit about, Portugal.
I'm super excited to be on this call with you, man. I see you. I see you, and there's so much light in you. It's just a beautiful. You're a beautiful man.
For sure,
I
man.
have to say that. Wow, you got a great smile too. Just FYI. I have no idea who you. I literally a zero. All I saw was it was an NBA star. I was like, cool. That's kind of cool. But like, what I see you, I see this beautiful emanation. This very powerful. I see so many dimensions to
I
what's going. It's very
appreciate it,
nice.
brother. I
Very
appreciate
nice to talk to you, man. I live for this stuff.
Yes, brother.
Wow.
Hey, when we find each other, man, when it's that we're looking for each other,
Dude.
all of the Avengers and superheroes are all trying to align, and this is a
Wow.
platform to do so. So I'm
I'm
glad
more
you
interested
found
in
one.
your story. I want to know about you. I don't want to talk about me. I know me. I'm done with me. I'm like,
We'll mix it in. We'll mix a
all
little bit
right, all
in,
right,
and
all
that's
right.
what we're all here for. Is just to talk about our transitions and how things are going for us on each side of the planet, and how we all kind of can
I want
connect.
to check.
How that
Can I?
connection.
Can we check in first? Like, how are you doing?
I'm
How's
good,
life?
man. I'm good, man. I'm actually very excited for this opportunity to speak with you, to jumpstart my
Likewise.
interview sessions on a part of my
Likewise.
podcast. I've been doing monologues for the last 4 episodes, so it's good to talk to someone refreshing and just to get this movement going, just to talk to people, give them opportunity to share their story with the world.
Okay. 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 So MBA. Okay, and now podcast. How long have you doing the podcast for?
I've had ideas for doing podcasts, but this is about 2 months in the making. We've been,
Okay.
building up for it because it's a syndicated platform now. It's not just us jumping on YouTube. So it's been, built up to have specific messaging targeting the specific demographic of people who really want to, be better human beings.
Cool. I'll give you what you need. You want to interview? Let's go. Let's go. What do you want
So
to know?
let's talk about XR Applied, man. Let's talk about
Okay.
your whole background of what you're doing right now.
Okay. So XR Applied is a company that I represent right now. It's a startup. It's gone public recently on CSE, the Canadian Securities Exchange. My job is to so my background is in technology evangelization. So I've been an evangelist, good word, evangelist, for innovation technologies like AR and VR since 2014. Um, like many things in my life, or most things in my life, it came through tuning in. So I was meditating at one point. I was working. My earliest background is in animation. So I come from the world of traditional hand-drawn animation. I moved into many different areas of animation. So 2D, 3D, stop motion. I very quickly accelerated in the animation space. But I get you're gonna get. I mean, so life. I want to speak to you from a particular place. I think
Yep.
it's nice to meet you in a particular place. And I think you're going to understand when I speak about these things in this way, because when you're doing this work or you're on this spiritual path and you're doing this inner work, you start to see how all aspects of your reality are. You start to see the bigger picture. You're able to not all the time, because sometimes life beats you down. You're like, I don't know, I'm in the storm and I don't see the way out. But like a lot of the time, you have that perspective, you have that distance to kind of see the picture and kind of map backwards the reality that you've just come from. So you're like, okay, so this is my life, and I see the gifts that I've received. And I understand that life gave me these incredible gifts and I was blessed with all these amazing things. And then I had this crazy other shit that was blocking me from understanding how to unravel or manifest my gifts. So I was self-sabotaging here and here and here. And it was all a game. Like, it's just this crazy game where I was given the gifts but then I was also given the stories and the trauma and the deep, deep, deep wounds, and to be the truth that I am here to be, or to manifest my voice, my soul purpose. I'd have to kind of go through these levels and unravel these levels, which is kind of deepening and unraveling the self, and then finally have finally kind of like get to that core in me where there was nothing really ever to do. It was all good the whole time. It was all good. It was always amazing. I just placed the story. The lens in which I was perceiving from was tainted with my own person, my own identity.
Wow.
And that identity was so compelling, so attractive, so seductive, so addictive, that I chose to buy into the identity and move from that place, and that gave me the story of this is good, this is bad, this is amazing, this is terrible, but it's this mind game, this ego, there's nothing wrong with the ego. There's nothing wrong with the ego. It's just beautiful. It drives us. It gives us purpose. It gives us a reason to be in this dimension, this reality. But unchecked and uncontained, it rules the game, and then it fucks us up. And it also, but it's so, I feel that you relate to those things.
Yes.
And it's beautiful that you relate to those things, because you're an MBA star. Like, you're out of like we different worlds. We live totally different realities. But I know you from knowing that aspect of me. And I know that journey, so I can relate.
Absolutely. Let me give you some irony, just for the fact that that particular journey for you ended in identity. That's where we started our episodes. Episode 1 was identity. And realizing the ego must be dropped, not necessarily erased, but you can't hold on to it and let it drive you. And so we go into identity, we go into sinking, we go into swimming, which are all, philosophies of letting go, having awareness, having responsibility and accountability, and being able to overcome obstacles, being patient and centered and still. And so when you have those things, I think that, the transition into any field is going to be an easy transition, because you know who you are. That's the identity. When you know who you are, and also, like you said, when you're fighting for things that you already have, this feeling of happiness that's already sitting there, and you have to turn into that perspective to understand that everything's always been okay. There's never been a problem. And once that's the realization and awareness that the ego can make you feel tilted and tainted, when it's just a cloud, or it's just a fog over your vision that's temporary. And if we hang on to those things, it becomes a part of the ego. And that's where the awareness of just letting things go, letting them be as they may, and things become, as we manifest them, as we focus on them. And I think that that's a huge part of our episode 1 and all through 4 is just a transition. So let's also talk about what you feel transitioning into certain businesses as you find out who you are. How does that shape, going into a business with the reality of society, knowing you can be rejected, knowing you can be discriminated against, so on and so forth? Where do you have to be and with your confidence going into those type of transitions, especially into the virtual, immersive technologies field, where there's certain people that can get you where you want to go, and there's certain energies that they allow in? Like, you talk about a little bit, what that takes as far as the transition into the space that you're in.
So talk about how to just get into the space.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So I'm gonna everyone has a skill, right? Like, and but how did I get into the space? I mean, how did I get into this? What's Sorry, just to ask the question. The core question is, how did I get into XR or XR? Is it this?
What kind of advice would you give someone looking to get into this space as far as transitioning into it?
So, firstly, like, where is that desire coming from?
Right.
Like, where's the desire? Like, what is it? Like, what do we do? Like, it's like, why do you want to do the thing that you do? Because without that driving for, like, if you're driven, okay, so I'm not a crazy sports person. I used to do a lot of martial arts within reason, but I was really into martial arts until the age of like 22 or 3. I'm a bit older now. And then I started competing with guys who were really, really good. And they fucked me up a little bit. Not, they were gentle, but they were like, excuse my language, if they're young people.
Good. We're good.
Okay. So, and I was, and my ego was hurt but until that point, I thought I was pretty good. And then I lost this motivation. Like, once I was like, I mean, I'm not going to be the toughest guy or the strongest guy anymore, because I'm not that guy. I'm actually not so quick. And actually, these guys are good. They weren't pro. It's just like getting a taste of someone that's a little bit good. And suddenly it really hurt me.
Yeah.
It hurt my ego. And I lost the drive for it. I lost the desire for it. And I'd been doing this for 13, 14 years, but I was driven from a story. And that story was, I want to be the biggest, bestest, baddest, strongest.
Right.
And the moment I was very clearly not going to be the biggest, bestest, baddest, strongest, that dropped. And then I look at many parts of my life, and I still, this game plays out, right? And this game is the masculine game. And I guess in your line of work, you're in that most competitive area. Absolutely. Where it's driven from big, like you're a big dude, you got all this, like, from my end, you're like, wow, you look amazing, you're a beautiful man. But like, from in the world that you're in, you're just like, you see a ton of dudes that are rocking it like this. You're just like, they're all just line them up against the wall, and so suddenly you don't feel special anymore, right? And then the mind goes, you're not as your biceps not it's 17 inches, not 17.1 inch, and then it's like, and that shit is toxic. That masculine aspect of, we all have that shit though, and so it's really interesting. Anyway, so I'm just, why do what we do? The truth is, go deep into your soul. And if your soul is called beyond the desire to be seen, like, if you do that shit for free and you're like, I just do this thing, the one truth that I have, the one constant I have today for me is my spiritual practice. The one today. And the XR took me to this place.
Right.
And the journey with XR was my journey of, like, at the time, it was my closest truth. I was meditating for a period of time. I had it down. I was like, this is where you need to be. I was on an existential search for purpose. That purpose came. It was like, you need to be in the space, because it married my background of animation and technology, immersive theater, and immersive storytelling, which I was really into, and I built my own spaces. And then real estate. I worked in a family business in real estate. So I was like, right, okay, for animation, you got 3D, you got real estate, you got immersive storytelling. This thing in 2014, Facebook had just bought Oculus, Palmer to sold. And I was like, and I was meditating on it. I was like, I was really asking, I was like, I want to be guided. I want to be shown where I need to go. And in that, and after 3 days meditating, I'd had this moment where a butterfly would come and rest on my head for 3 days in a row, meditating. I was sitting, I'd be like, this is cool. And I'd be like, is anyone seeing this? A butterfly would sit on. So I was like, and I follow signs. I see life, I see signs. I understand when those signs are for me to interpret. And it's a very subtle thing to kind of, it's a nuanced thing. Like, because some people, it's like, what is it? Like genius and madness. It's very nuanced,
Yes.
Spiritual and sociopath, very nuanced. And you got to tune that. You got to tune it very carefully. And some people are able to tune themselves. Some people need tools. I need tools to keep myself in check daily. But it came from asking the deepest questions I could ask at that time for myself.
Right.
And that was I got a clear sign. I was like, go VR. That's where you got to be. And I didn't know anything about VR at those days. And I was coming from real estate. And I was like, where? And then there was a conference. I went to the conference, and then trusting, intuition, feeling, tuning, learning more about tuning into intuition. Yes. Intuition is guiding us. So it's like, the more I've begun to listen to that intuition and really develop that process of feeling where my guidance should be. And it's like, this is where you need to. So, and then I followed that, and that unraveled the many, many things in my life. And VR and being in this space at the forefront of the AR VR revolution,
Yep.
focused on real estate, because for me it was just that's where I went. It was like, go here, be here, do this.
Yep.
And then life kind of unraveled. Life did its thing. Actually, life is just doing life.
Yep.
And you're just riding the train, and I'm riding this life train, and I'm just trusting.
Right.
And it feels good when you trust and you're in the movement and you see it from a place of, wow, this is super amazing, this is positive, this is great, this is blessed, and this is inspired. And so you move with that energy for some time. And so it was that for me.
So what do you think about VR and its potential for the future in comparison to the natural state in which we would not necessarily be abandoning, but we would be getting away from, with the ability to immerse ourselves in a whole new reality that is more so illusionary when we tap into reality and we tap into, everything without the goggles, and we have to, really kind of hone in on right now. And you look at mental illness and mental health and mental awareness and the whole concept of isolation. And that's where the virtual marketplace started to increase because of the lockdowns and the pandemic. With our company, we had to fast track a lot of the things we were doing simply because now everybody went virtual right away. The Zoom calls, the meetings, the music, the film, everything started to be more immersive virtually. But when you look at how the pandemic wants to push everyone away from each other, so the gathering, the fellowshipping, the communion, all of the things that we're used to when it comes to interaction and engagement. What do you think the difference is, with the newness of where virtual reality can go compared to where we've come in our natural state as far as interaction and being able to touch each other? Are we going to be abandoning this and adopting this new culture, or is it something we can balance?
So there's a lot to unpack in what you said, but it's a so why I was drawn to VR because of the potential to create new realities, and obviously the spiritual aspirant who walks this path is excited by this idea that, wow, it's like taking psychedelics, and there's a great Jason Silver, who I love, who does the expression of shots of awe, that amazing kind of those little soundbite pod things. He said the VR digital technologists are like the psychedelic digital shaman of the future. So it's kind of this potential of what taking psychedelics could be, that you could create this experience, or what it might be like to do. I mean, ayahuasca or any plant medicine, DMT, and the VR could bring us to these states. And this is always what compelled me. I was like, wow, I could create these new worlds, new realities way beyond what we experience today. And what's happened is a lot of people. So VR has a great potential, and a lot of people. It's both. We did something. I used to do something. One of the products that I used to sell was something called the sensory reality pod, which is like not just audiovisual, but integrated smell, touch, taste, and heat and wind, and and then also we had biometric feedback, so we could measure people's biometric data, and then create real-time responsive environments based on how you felt. And it was being used for mental health. So exactly this space. So people who had Alzheimer's, PTSD, trauma, dementia, just varying levels of mental health issues, disabilities. The idea is that there was a Dutch organization called the Philadelphia Group that were doing trials with a sensory reality pod. And the idea is we were going to treat people, or we were treating people with certain mental health issues or traumas. And it was going to either stimulate the mind or help unravel the blockage that people caught in some kind of cerebral loop with something. And there was a guy had basically come back from, I think it was Iraq, and he had been blown up by a landmine, and he was blocked on that story, and he was just kind of like, it was just cycling in his mind. And the idea, we actually recreated a VR experience. I think it was Iraq, but a VR experience that recreated his last experience, where he kind of running and then he's blown up, and then the idea is to bring them back to that experience and help them literally unravel that experience through reliving it, and smelling the gunpowder from the mine, or whatever comes from an explosion, like and it's kind of like, so, and then people with like losing their memory, or people with like people with various levels of autism, how to help them reintegrate into the world and creating a soft setting, so you can control the settings for reality. Now, that's a great potential use case, but what, and there are some, and so VR is, there's a sliding scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing beats connectivity.
Right.
Nothing beats connecting. Nothing beats the energy of presence.
Right.
Nothing. Like when you've tasted presence, or you've met someone in that space of like, I see the light in you, and I feel it, and I feel the expansiveness that comes with that, and I feel the love that emanates through that place. You can't synthesize that.
Right.
And that we know, like, and that's the will, that's what drives us. And the idea in the future, the reality, the world we want to create, we want to bring everyone to that place of oneness, where we connect, where we meet in truth. And it doesn't matter where you're from, but gay, straight, black, white, yellow, pink, whatever, like, doesn't matter. Like, we just meet as one, like, and that is the potential. There is a potential for humanity which is beyond transcendent. It's beautiful, and we know it to be true.
Do you think,
however,
do you think that VR could hinder that though? Do you think that VR
so
could stop that?
so everything is okay. So one of the great truths is everything. Truth is to know paradox. Right. VR can both hinder it and excel it at the same time. Absolutely. Right. And I could give you beautiful use cases as to, it's like the dystopian, utopian. Both are true. Both time, actually, multiple timelines, multiple realities, multiple potentialities. They're all coexisting at once. So how do we? So to give you a clear answer is yes and no.
Right.
And which one do you want to like? Which one do you want to feed? Which story do you want to feed? Do you want me to feed the one where VR is the I'm selling VR, so it's not in my best interest for the company I represent to be like, what?
No. It's
cool. But I also agree.
The reality of it is
so,
does VR allow us at some, because you look at Ready Player One,
right,
and you look at Minority Report,
right,
and you say, okay, in the future there's going to be places you can go, sit in rooms, and you can just live on
Ghost
your
in the
own.
Shell too. Yeah, and that the one with Bruce Willis as well.
Yes, Surrogates.
Right.
You could just do your own thing, right? And you don't have to
the
leave
metaverse.
your house. You don't have to leave your house. You just, stay here, eat, get back on. You don't have to talk to any, but you really are connecting. You're just connecting in a digital manner. But what you spoke on is that connection, that presence, you can't really substitute.
So maybe I know some guys that devised the Tesla suit, which is about feeling haptics. So the idea is
the Tesla suit. Actually, yeah, I know all about the Tesla suit. Yeah.
So I know the guys. I was there at the beginning when the guys were developing. We were in Vegas together at CS back in the day when these guys were just like winging it from Ukraine, like literally. They're like, they had some rubber thing they did tie it. I've gone through that transition of really seeing how these inventions came into being. The question is, their vision is for us to really feel, and then it's like, can we synthesize truth? Like, what is truth? What is connection? I mean, I feel connected to you right now, right? And we're speaking through Zoom, and I'm like, I want to hang out with this dude, and I feel super connected to you. I'm like, this dude, so do we need to be physically there to feel connected? No, obviously not. Right. Like no. I can be right next to someone and be repelled by them. Why?
Exactly. That's why I formed the question, because a lot of people want the straight answer, right? I'm selling a product. Why would I buy VR if it can stop me from interaction? Because it can give you so much more than interaction. It can give you an infinite of possibilities. But are you willing to not just sacrifice temporary engagement and interaction with people, but it would slow down a little bit. But it would also, like you said, it can encourage you to get out more. Things in different realities that we can create can prompt you to go out and go to the store and buy this or buy that, or go to this concert, or go interact with these people that you met in a group chat or in a meeting room. You know, these are things that also we can create inside of virtual reality, is physical locations that people can meet up at after being in virtual reality. It's the conversion that I think we could balance for sure. I just like asking those questions simply because
I'm just gonna check in with you for a second.
Go ahead.
Because everything that you're saying is purely a speculation and a projection.
Yep.
No one knows. And the reality is VR is definitely here to stay.
Yep.
It ain't going nowhere. AR and VR, or mixed realities or extended realities, are going to be the most disruptive technologies of the next, I don't know, it's the third internet, right? It's
right.
It is beyond, like, it's crazy what's going to happen. We don't even really understand. And like, people who have, and that's why I like the psychedelics, is people who had explored different dimensions of existence in some potential way, were like, whoa, this thing can be this. And the reality is, it takes a lot of people time to catch up creatively. Right. Just to be like, and the hardware has to catch up, the software has to catch up. Like, there is this lag time for most people to get on the same train.
Yeah.
But if you see trends, if you feel energy, if you can move, you're like, well, this thing is going to be big. This is here to stay, and it's clearly here to stay. And now we can qualify that, because although it hasn't commercially, there aren't a billion households that are using VR today yet. Like, every major player, like Apple, right, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, like every big player and like, they've all making a big play for everyone's like for this space, because they all see, and they even want to shape what's coming. So there's big, so Facebook wants to shape this, you know, with social VR, right? And it's like, which is annoying, because it's a consciousness behind Facebook, and there's a certain an entity that is driven with an agenda. So it's about agendas ultimately. It's like, what is the agenda of the vehicle that's driving this thing, and how is it going to shape? But fortunately, there isn't a total monopoly. Ultimately, capitalism wants to create monopolies at the end, because it wants to consume everything into one. So the idea that capitalism is a fair kind of like a fair model for all is kind of mad, because actually at the end of capitalism, everyone just converges into one at the singular point, where it just like all consume all and become the ultimate consume. So maybe the idea, but there is a certain, anyway, we don't have to go down that road. But what's going to happen with VR? What's going to happen with metaverse? Who's going to create it? I think it's going to be massively decentralized. I'm just throwing out words. So decentralized. It's going to be open. Everyone's going to have access. It's going to but Ready Player One was a great reference. You know, it was like this big conglomerate wanted to put advertising everything and own this thing, and then whatever the dude's name was, like, we don't want to be owned by a big corporate. We want to be free. And then at the end, the kind of, what was the story at the end was like, well, it's better that we spend 3 days a week in the virtual world, but we have to worry about the real world, because the real world's important too. And everyone was like, cool, that makes sense. And actually, there's kind of a really good insight to what might happen potentially, because what we look at today, where there are some big problems that are happening in the world, and people just want to bury themselves in the sand. They're like, I don't want to deal with this. This is too big. I don't want to feel my feels, right? And if I don't have to feel my fucking feels and deal with myself, if I can give my freedom away, so I don't have to feel the feels, and if I to give the illusion of safety and security, I'm going to give you my freedom. That's what most people do. So with VR, without VR, that's just human nature at the moment, right? And there are some people who are like, nah, you've got to feel it. You got to, and then you're feeling it, and I'm feeling like, wow, it's so painful to feel it. Right. It's like, so if we're champion feeling the feels, and we're like, oh, shit, man, how are you going with that? It's rough, but it's beautiful. It's God. It's living. So you're living with God. I'm living with God. But it's what a roller coaster. It brings up stuff, makes you want to cry every day. It's tough. Doesn't matter how big and strong you are. You can have the biggest muscles as well. It's still fucking tough. It's gonna hit you. Still fucking tough. Doesn't change it, right? Because it's feeling the truth of life moving as one through you in all its dimensions in real time. So that is
It's a
I don't know if
beautiful
that's,
answer, man. It's an incredible answer to a stumpy question. And
it wasn't a stumpy question. It's a good question.
it was a solid question, but I respect the hell out of that answer because it was much needed. And people need to gravitate towards understanding everything you just said. But let's get into the ancient wisdom practices. Let's just get into
Oh,
the
love it.
spirituality for a second
Cool.
because a lot of what we talk about here is a philosophy. It's more so what we personally prefer going through our own transitions, and we want to share. I want people to share these practices because I feel life is about perspectives. And when you have perspectives that you can embrace and absorb, that you can take and then apply to your own experiences, it's not as if you're imitating someone else, but you're taking in someone else's journey as if you're watching their movie, and you're learning from their mistakes, you're learning from their successes and their failures, and you're applying it. And I think that's what we as humans are supposed to do. We're supposed to share. And I think that's sharing experience and perspective. So let's talk a little bit about that ancient wisdom practice, those ancient wisdom practices, because I'm also very familiar with ancient knowledge and light bearers and light workers and
I'm
Reiki
assuming
and the
I'm
whole
assuming
nine.
your audience is onto all of this stuff. That
Hey,
this is your
this is just like you said, it's decentralized, it's open. So we
open to
want to
everyone.
bring in those who are unfamiliar. They
Okay.
may be interested in VR, but now what we're going to speak about now may get them interested in understanding meditation.
Shall I connect it all?
Absolutely.
All right. Let me let me give a little flex on this. Okay. So the first thing that comes through is what's really important for all of us is a connect as human beings to be present, to be grounded and to be connected is our linked to our ancestry,
Right.
to ensure that we have a connection to the source of the what makes us human, what makes us who we are, what makes us defined by a culture, practices, communities. Like there's a lineage that we all are from that's become very blurred today. We get this quite distorted and blurred. And it's been kind of severed. African American men have been going through that for a long time because obviously the disconnect of what's happened to you. I'm a Jewish person and we've been in diaspora for some time. So what the Jews did well is they carried their wisdom with them. They just like like we ain't gonna know without this. Stay with this. We don't know. We lost. We have no home. We have nothing. We're staying with this. And I can unpack that too. But it's so important for the sense of self to have that connection to our ancestry, to find it and to reignite it. And spirituality or practice. It's okay. So where to enter this? Technology today is okay. I want to jump into that one. The potential, the importance today of within an age of like crazy information. We live in an age of like just so much information. We're just overwhelmed with just news and bullshit
Yes.
news and fake news and noise and drama, CNN, like constant
All day.
negative news, right? This information is coming out and stuff that and then COVID, this constant, like, I don't know when the last time I read a newspaper was, to be honest. And I don't say that in ignorance, but I actually feel blessed because people, unfortunately, what you notice is that it's about focusing attention.
Yeah.
And you're constantly drawing attention to particular topics, and we negate everything else that we could be looking at by
Yes.
drawing our attention to something very focused. And we give that power. Attention is power. Like attention and intention is everything.
Yes.
What's the attention? What's the
Wow.
intention behind the intention? It's like,
Love
what
it.
are we driving people towards? What are we consuming? Because what we consume becomes us. We forms our reality. Like it becomes embodied in our nervous system. It changes our molecular structure. It reshapes our neurology and our physiology and our psychology. So everything is modeled and shaped by what we eat, what we see, what we watch, what we hear. Our senses is our interface. So our five senses, it's our interface with the world. And we have to become very aware. So awareness of how are we interacting with the world? What we touch, taste, smell, see, and feel. Feel. All the senses, all those guys. So and it becomes very confusing and very disconnected. And this importance of having this connection to ancestry, because that's where we can infuse the values, the virtues, the essences of what we need to be a fully performing and functioning, happy, healthy, connected human being.
Right.
And the word is in the human being, right? It's in the language itself. It's being, not doing. It's like to be like, I'm good with this. I'm good with my family. I'm good with my community. I feel present. I feel connected. I feel alive. I'm awakened to my senses. I'm able to work with the emotions, the energy and motion moving through me. I can move it. I'm connected from my roots to my crown. I have opened up all of the energy centers. My heart is open to feeling and receiving. The judgment is not there. I'm not blocked. I have that capacity. We have that potential to meet the world in that fullness. And the importance of these ancient, and there's nothing new today that wasn't given to us in the West. Let's say we look at the wisdom teaching. So before Islam, there was Christianity. Before Christianity, there was Judaism. Judaism is the first book, the Old Testament, the Torah. Then it kind of evolved, if you're a Christian, to the story of Jesus, so who was an enlightened being, and then the story of Muhammad, who was an enlightened prophet. And just to contextualize, now, at the root of these wisdoms is these sacred texts. Now, in the West, in the monotheistic practices, you've got the Torah, which is the first book, and this is important for many reasons. And then in the East, you've got the Vedas. And Torah goes back 3,500 years to the time of Mount Sinai, and this channeling from Mount Sinai by Moses to the 600,000 Jews that were present, and the millions of Egyptians who have chosen to follow the Jews. And they received this enlightenment for a period of time under Mount Sinai. And there was this period of time which the Jews are kind of trying to connect back to, where Moses revealed this energy. Let's just call it energy for now. Let's not even go into script. Just call it pure love energy. So he revealed this expression, this energy, this potentiality, and people received it. And they were overwhelmed, and he was a channel because people couldn't be direct channels. So Moses channeled this. And the reason why he was able to do that was because he was so humble. Yeah. He was so great because he was so humble, because there was no identity there. And what you find with the great beings.
Say that again. Say that again for the audience.
He was
they gotta catch it. They gotta catch that part.
He was
why
so
Moses
great.
did that.
He was so great because fundamentally, he was known as the most humble of all the Jewish people. And remember, he was the son of a pharaoh. He came from the highest order, and he chose to leave all the gilded palaces of Egypt for his people, for that connection to his truth, because he was called by something deep within him to follow. And at the age of 40, he left. He started his journey, I think a bit younger, to free the Jews. And then we can talk about what he brought and the technology that he brought and what he revealed. And in that desert. But when he was 80 years old by the time he kind of brought this wisdom to the people, right? And this channeling, this person was a humble man, a super, super humble being. And the humility, which meant that there was no person behind it, there was no identity, there was no stories, so it allowed him to dissolve into the essence of life, fundamentally. If you don't come with identity, you can be connected to all. The more strong the ego, the more strong the identity, the more separation you create, because you're so convinced by your own I, me, I, this motherfucker, and my power, and you think you are the author of reality. When you release all of that, the humility is to know that you are just one with all. But that is true power. That is the true power. And all the great avatars were so great because there was no person there. And so the imprint was a legacy of 2,000, 6,000 years for Krishna, Buddha. These avatars left a legacy by their own humility and their own non-being, their nothingness. And their nothingness meant they were no thing, therefore they were everything.
Wow.
And it's that which fundamentally at its core is what's being expressed in all of the great wisdom teachings. In the language, so content that's shared within the context of the time. The context is, I mean, if you're a Bedouin in the desert 3,500 years ago, or if you're in the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Vedic scriptures, you're looking at the Sanskrit literature, it's still trying to share a message either through the voice of Buddha, the voice of Jesus, the voice of Krishna, the voice of Moses, that people can relate and connect to through the mind. Now, that is one entry point, but not the most direct. The most direct relationship that we can have with scripture is experience. And these languages, Aramaic, Sanskrit, Hebrew, they're not like normal English. They don't work that way. They're different. We call these light languages.
Right.
And the light languages are based around the technology of sacred geometry. And they're symbols. They're symbols that express something divine. They're ways, they're channels that connect us to all of creation through the shape. They say that the Hebrew letters are born out of the fire, right? So they came to us, they were molded, they're three-dimensional. And then there are many amazing people that are doing wonderful things to understand the power of these symbols and what is revealed within them. One of the things that I'm really interested in, this is something I do as a side project called Soul Lingua, is to extract from some of these symbols the energy that's contained within them, which means that you don't have to understand them. You can experience them through sight, visually, through sound and sight. We connect. And that means that we can receive, like the beautiful books, like many of the wisdoms are called the Kabbalah, is to receive, the Zohar is a book of splendor. These books, it's about revealing light through technology. I like to see the ancient wisdom teachings as a type of ancient technology that was here to reveal light through sharing the direct experience through the scriptures before you even go into the translations. And I could really get, I don't know, I'll stop there because I could really go into this, but I want to give you just that to taste.
Woo! Oh man, I love it. Just so everyone knows, this is the Transition Podcast from Man to God. And Luke Levene, my special guest, just explained small steps on how to get there. Very small steps on how a man can become godlike by understanding his humility, his identity, and his understanding for enlightenment. We're going to end the podcast with one question for Luke, and that's just an interpretation of our three prominent phrases for the podcast. And I would like your interpretation as far as when you hear these three words, what does it speak to your being? What does it speak to your energy, your soul, your source? We would like to know your immediate response to these three words and what you think as far as everything we spoke about, how it kind of wraps up, ultimately what us as human beings are trying to strive for. These three words are transition, transformation, and transcendence.
I like it. 3 T's.
The 3 T's.
3 T's. So 3 T's: transition, transformation. Well, transition for me, if I just tune in, is the transitioning from one state to another state, one understanding, one level of awareness or consciousness transitioning, or to be willing to walk through. So say, I'm taking that first step, I'm transitioning, I'm going to take that first step. And in taking that first step, we have something that happens. We start to transform. Once we take that first step into the unknown and walking into the unknown, I mean, it's really just like it's stepping into the void. It's that beautiful thing, 2 paths lead into the woods, and I chose the road less traveled.
Yeah.
And that made all the difference, right? It's like choosing the unknown, the calling of the soul. And that's the transition. It's like making that shift. I'm not going to go this way. This is the route that everyone told me to do. I'm going this way. I'm pulled. Something's pulling me. There's a beautiful thing called syntropy, but syntropic, which is connected to spirituality, not syntropic farming, but syntropy. The idea that, anyway, if you ever want to speak to me, there's plenty to unpack.
We will. We'll come back to it.
Transformation is like the hero's journey, Jervis Campbell. As you go on that, you walked into the unknown. You're taken on a journey, right? And that journey, which is never ending, we're all on the hero's journey, right? We start, we walk, and that transition of choosing that different road takes us on a journey from light to darkness, because we have to face all of the shadow aspects in the shadows, which is all truly just the nature of self. And as we reemerge through the transformation, we come back to that central point, but we have transcended self. We have transcended what it means to be me. We're no longer the me that people knew. It's the hero's journey. It's Lord of the Rings. It's Journey to the West. Every great story, every fable is about everything that's happening in our life can be seen from this process. And life is cyclical in its own design, spiral actually. It moves up towards a singular point, but it's constantly, we're going through this time. We're doing these 3 T's all the time. And the transcendent experience is once we have unraveled those levels, we've transcended the self.
Wow. Oh man, I think that if everybody goes back to, I would believe either episode 2 or 3, you would hear me say something verbatim what he just said. And that's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary thing that just happened, because that is exactly what someone who's been through a transition will tell you. They know what steps it took, what steps it takes, and exactly what you have to do to get there. You have to transition. You got to take those steps. You got to be aware. You got to go through not only your sinking and your drowning, but you have to emerge, re-emerge, and start to swim so that you can realize your transformation, so that you can get out of the water and say, I almost died just then, but I'm not the same person anymore. I'm someone who can now swim when I get in the water. I don't have the fear of drowning. And you're now this new person who can now go and walk around the planet with a transcendence. You now have liberated yourself from fear. You've liberated yourself from doubt and questioning. You have no longer have expectation. Your intention is pure, and you can now live a full life because your soul has now been completely satisfied with not only the journey, but the overcoming of the obstacles, and then the channeling of the source telling you that you've passed the test. You've passed the test. Now you must share this information. Now you must share with the people how to get to me. And that's the man to God transition that we talk about. And I want to take this time to thank Luke for coming on the show and expressing and sharing his testimony of not only virtual reality, but the spiritual journey of how he's become a man to God. And then he is definitely a God being, and he's definitely resonating that energy through this interview. And I want everybody to check him out. Where can we find anything on your social medias and where people can find you other than
so company, let's do a plug. Company XR Applied. If anyone wants to build anything with VR or AR or extended realities, please connect with us on Instagram. Soul Lingua is the exploration. Soullingua.gatherings. LinkedIn, obviously Luke Levene. Yeah, my email is luke@lukelevene.com. You're an amazing dude. So it's beautiful. I'm really grateful for you. And I send all of your listeners love, and ultimately what you learn through this process, and ultimately the place that we meet and the meeting is in that loving space of knowing, a feeling and knowing that you've walked through certain things, you've walked through the fire and you've come out and you've learned that deepening of that humility through that process, and you expanded that process and you're able to move from that place and share from that place, and life becomes more miraculous through that process. Magic happens, and that creates a huge new potentiality for everyone in many areas of your life: business, professional, personal, family.
Absolutely. Again, everyone, tune in to the next episode of the Transition Podcast, Man to God. We have a lot of new guests coming up, but right now I want you to really marinate on what Mr. Luke Levene had to say today. I'm telling y'all something right now.
You're too cool, man.
I'm telling y'all something right now. Now, when you can listen to our podcast and you can say one thing only: I learned something. I learned something if you're here with an intention. And today I learned something, and I'm going to tell my listeners to understand. Be patient. Be patient. You have to stay with us because every message is a chain reaction, is a chain link. Luke is one of many many superheroes that need to be heard, because he's one testimony of millions of people who have transitioned in this world, and people need to know that it's possible. Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. Mr. Luke Levene. Check him out on the social media platforms again. This is Rashad McCants.